Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Problem Solver Politics live stream. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And it's pretty crazy, but right now, everything is officially nuts. And if you haven't heard by now, we're about to start. I think a lockdown, Cody, that's going to be crazier than the first one, simply because they have been emboldened. These people, they have been emboldened. They're hysterical. They have no God, and there is absolutely no reason that they should do anything other than flex their political muscles. And we have an entire populace that is just willing to go along with what they say. Every middle manager is spineless. I have lost hope in my fellow American. Save me from myself, Cody.
No, keep talking, dude.
No.
Okay, so
I can't hear you.
let's get into.
Now I can hear you.
So let's get into some of the actual news here, though, because there is some interesting stuff going on, and I would say some evidence that does point to it. So what we're talking about is, I guess we'll start off here. So we'll start off on the macro, and then we'll get a bit more micro on the story. I feel like those words. I don't.
Okay.
But here we go. So the WHO, or the WHO, whatever you want to call them, not the band, the WHO, has announced or is warning that some countries may have to reinstate lockdowns as the coronavirus pandemic accelerates. So some countries might have to re-implement severe restrictions to curb the spread of the coronavirus, such as lockdowns, a top World Health Organization official said Wednesday. Now, the World Health Organization has kind of been full of crap almost always on this. Hate to say it. One way, maybe they're right. I don't know, but they just seem to very much be saying contradictory things at times. However, they do go on to mention that some countries with rapidly spreading coronavirus outbreaks, well, they go on to say the same thing 4 or 5 times. I want to get to this. Some countries who have had the success in suppressing transmission who are opening up now may have a setback, may have to implement interventions again, may have to implement these so-called lockdowns again. We hope not. We hope that we don't have to go into widespread lockdowns again, so it's not too late to act fast.
Well, we hope not, but
what
it's
does
going to
that
be happening.
mean? Well, yeah, here's the other thing, too, though. You can argue what is severe lockdown? So, again, we'll walk it back and make it a bit more local. We're based out of the Los Angeles area. So what's going on currently with Los Angeles as far as coronavirus goes? So I'm going to go through this article right here. So California Governor Gavin Newsom today announced this coronavirus update that restaurants, movie theaters are to shut down operations indoor and deploys a enforcement strike team. I believe he's kind of delayed some of the enforcement strike team. However, some of the brief things we were seeing in California, like bars and restaurants starting to reopen, has been scaled back starting today. Restaurants still will be allowed to offer food for pickup or delivery, which is sounding again like we're re-entering lockdown. I believe retail is also on the list. I think gyms will uniquely stay open. But what that also looks like, 4th of July is obviously this weekend. And again, and I'm not talking, and this is, obviously our area.
Well, I was just going to say, they've gone in 24 hours from encouraging us to listen to it in our cars via the radio, which was literally what elected officials in California thought was a viable option, to now just canceling it altogether.
Yeah, which makes sense, I guess. But then now we're going to, so this is a local source here, KTLA5. And again, this is, I don't want to say too unique to California. This is in a lot of areas, but we live out here, so it's easier for me to kind of walk through what's going on with us. And I'm sure a lot of you guys live in other parts of the country. You can kind of relate with what's going on to where you live. Some areas, I believe, didn't close down at all. But California has been one that had a big dramatic lockdown and then reopening. Yeah. So check this out. What will be open and closed on 4th of July weekend? So let's go through beaches. Well, LA County announced it will close its beaches starting 12:01 a.m. Friday through 5 a.m. on Monday, so 4th of July weekend. They mentioned that Ventura County beaches, among the first in Southern California to reopen for recreational use, also being closed. Laguna Beach in Orange County followed suit and will close. And on Wednesday, the Newport City Council voted to shutter their shores. We go to bars, and they mentioned Newsom over the weekend ordered bars closed in 7 counties, including Los Angeles, and recommended that 8 additional counties close theirs. On Wednesday, the Orange County Board of Supervisors voted to close their bars. It keeps going through more. Parks and trails. This is where stuff gets crazy to me. Pico Rivera officials closed city parks June 30th out of an abundance of caution amid the pandemic. Most trails in LA County remain open, but Eaton Canyon National Area now requires advanced reservations because of previous overcrowdings. People want to go to them. But they go through and mention more and more stuff here. But now, not the biggest deal that they're closing, you could say, parks and beaches and trails and stuff like that. But what's worrying me about the idea of a second lockdown that maybe is a bit more widespread than just California.
If you follow this lockdown, I have no more respect for you as an American that believes in liberty, personal responsibility, or the intrinsic value of an individual human being.
Okay, so what does the real American does? What does the Hulk Hogan do
completely disregard this.
Okay, but how?
Completely disregard this en masse and just go to the park, go to the beach, because these people don't care about us. They don't care about health and safety. This is a self-serving flex that is ruining people's lives, and I have no more patience for it anymore, just none. And I doubt as somebody as cooperative
I got a question.
I doubt I'm the tip of the iceberg.
What park are you going to?
Any of them, because how are they going to enforce it?
No, which one? Which one are you going to? Maybe you don't want to. Actually, take it back. Don't tell them now.
I was about to say I haven't planned it out yet. But how isn't it great that in 2020 you get to be real edgy and a rule breaker by going to the park?
Well, no, but I want to get
tough as.
I want to get to one more thing here, though, and then we'll get to more of the kind of fun stuff about this. Well, not fun, but the more other things going on. So, yeah, they're closing down in L.A. County again. What's the big deal, right? Well, this is what's kind of leaning towards thinking. Again, the World Health Organization's moaning about it. But also, this is interesting. Trump wants a second, larger stimulus check.
Yes.
So, Trump said on Fox Business Wednesday that he not only supports a second stimulus check, but also supports a larger second check than the Democrats. Oh, I love it. I support it, but it has to be done properly, Trump said. I support actually larger numbers than the Democrats. Whatever that means. Does it mean more checks or bigger, more checks or bigger checks? Can't tell. Anyway, this is the clearest expression to date from Trump regarding his support for a second stimulus check. Last month, he said there would be another stimulus package coming soon. And there have been many proposals for a second stimulus check. I don't believe they mention it in this, but I also want to mention, I believe is in the other article I have right here, that Mitch McConnell came out at a news conference on Tuesday and said that he believes another stimulus could be coming soon. Now, I don't want to be reading into stuff too much. I have to imagine if a second stimulus comes, maybe it's a reward for being so good and well-respecting during the lockdowns, but it feels to me like a second stimulus check would signify some kind of... I mean, we're seeing it not only in California, we're seeing it across the country. A lot of places closing down restaurants or kind of reining in their reopenings. That combined with... the Republicans in the Senate in the executive branch, I mean, two of the, expressing interest in a second round of stimulus. Democrats have been continuing to push a second round of stimulus checks. It feels like this is going to keep going on.
Yeah, so wait, but this is so weird for me to hear this coming from you, Cody. You actually think that there is a shred of benevolence in their hearts for us having been well-behaved during a stimulus? That they're giving us this? Oh, okay, good.
Like I was saying.
I thought you'd gone crazy there
what are
for
the
a
other
second.
options here, right? Like a second stimulus just because you're so cool? A second stimulus because you're so good? Or a second stimulus because this is ongoing, right?
No, this means only one thing. One of two things happening simultaneously. One, Donald Trump is getting serious about his reelection now. He hasn't taken law and order seriously enough. He hasn't been the candidate that stopped the protests. We've reached a point where families are coming out to defend their own properties with guns. I'm putting security systems on my house. Half of these homes on the streets are boarding up front-facing windows and putting barriers in front of their houses, right? So you have an entire populace that feels like it now has to defend itself, and none of its leaders are coming to its aid.
We live together. I don't see that. We don't live together. We live in the same area. I don't see that.
For the first time in my life, you didn't see on the main drag.
There was the one day where people put them up for seemingly no reason because
seemingly no reason except for the announced protests, and everybody knows when the protesters come, your glass gets broken.
That's the funny thing. There is countless. Nobody writes an article that says a bunch of people thought a bad protest was going to happen, but then it didn't. Now, actually, ironically enough, they did write those articles about our city because our city is a bunch of media people that live in it who write articles. Yeah. But other cities, that happened. There was literally a meme going around on the internet. People on the left were going around doing this thing where they're going to local Facebook groups and they were saying that 6 busloads of Antifas are coming in to loot and burn your city down. And every city fell for it because people were scared, to your point. They were scared. But that was also like, I guess to your point, even more so, to agree with what you're saying, people were that scared, but at the same time, it was something that passed.
All this stimulus check means is that Donald Trump has gotten serious about his re-election campaign. He suffered the first 2-week period where he's actually thought, holy crap, I would lose re-election if election were held today. To an idiot, a bumbling, senile moron, and anybody that votes for him, I have no idea what on earth you're thinking. Everybody else is thinking, what are you thinking? The Democrats are thinking, what are we thinking? Like, anybody could be better this guy. So how do you lose Donald Trump to a guy that anybody's thinking could beat him? And he must have had some kind of introspection or something, but motivated for re-election, he finally said, I got to do something here. He botched being the law and order candidate. That bus has sailed. The individual citizens stood up and started defending their life, their limb, and their property. So he missed out on that opportunity. But what can he do? He can do the economic bailout. He can save the average person. And he knows now from the first round of stimulus checks that, holy crap, the only thing that worked was the individual check that I put my name on. And boy, my number is going to go up a lot higher with the working class, a lot higher with the African-American community, a lot higher with the single mom that got a bailout check. That, he's made a political calculation and decided that will work. Now, I don't think he's doesn't have a benevolent shred in his body, okay? But I don't think any of these characters are thinking about rewarding the populace for good behavior and let's all do this together for mutual benefit. I think they're thinking, holy crap, what do I have to do to get reelected? And he's realized this is really his only way out if he bails out America with a personal check.
Or again, to the point of maybe it just means the lockdown's continuing. And it's like this stimulus is just because we have to do another one because the lockdown is in order. But then I want to get to the title of the stream so far. I want to get to this a little bit. And this is what was interesting to me. I haven't looked at this, just being honest. It's been about 24 hours since I checked this out. But yesterday I saw this tweet go up. It was from an Allie Bauman. She's a reporter from CBS New York. I have no reason to believe she's any particular line of political. She's a New York reporter. It's probably more left-leaning than right? No. Anyway, she posted this video, and it said, protesters passed the time dancing while waiting for city budget vote results. Right?
All right.
And this was what's going on. Now, what I thought was really, really, really interesting is I had gone through, and this isn't the most popular tweet of all time, 1,000 likes, but the video was viewed 1 million times, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But yesterday when I went through the comment section, and we'll go through and look at it, this was the tone of nearly every single response. Can I sit on the beach now? Yeah, my children may not get an education this fall, and I won't be able to work as long as people get to dance. It's all worth it. Confirming once again that COVID-19 is the most woke virus in human history. Cuomo is sending inspectors into city eateries to make sure they're following orders. I'm not allowed to sit on a park bench. All the COVID, being unemployed looks like a blast. New York doesn't have restrictions on gatherings, and regular people still can't go to church. I'm just going to keep going through them. So can I go to the beach? This is what black privilege looks like. That's an interesting one. And the reason why I'm reading these is it really, I'm not trying to say what I think about this, what you should think about this. I'm trying to show you guys this is the growing mood. And I want you guys to let me know in chat how much you feel about this. But what I'm seeing, there's a lot of people that are very apolitical, and they're seeing one of two things. Everybody's getting restless over the lockdowns. They've been going on a long time.
It's not restless. This is literally an existential threat to people's livelihood.
But one second, for some it is, but some people are just getting restless. Some people are just saying, "Can we go to the beach and can I play soccer or basketball?" But here's the funny thing. You could say that's dumb. What a stupid thing to be upset about. That's what they care about, man. And my bottom, what I'm trying to show you guys is that this is the tone I got from the last time I went through this one thread. It's just one, but it was literally just people complaining and saying, I'm upset because I can't go outside and other people can do this. My larger point is this. I've seen it. I'm sure everyone's seen it. I'm sure some of you guys are doing it. There's a lot of people that are legitimately just being like, lockdown, schmockdown. You know who's saying that? These people are saying lockdown, schmockdown.
Yeah.
No gatherings? What the hell? Why not? But my larger point is this, is that it's not that crazy to say there'll be a large group of Americans just saying don't care about the lockdown, disregarding them. There is a large group of Americans every single day saying don't care about the lockdowns and disregarding them. This is from yesterday.
Yeah.
All across the country, people are getting in the streets to show we don't care about the lockdowns.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, they'll crack down on conservatives because you can. You can always send the cops on conservatives.
Depending on where.
Oh, come on. Name one
in New York City, yes.
of any town. No, you're going to tell me Bill de Blasio is going to send into a predominantly black crowd any kind of police presence.
But in Provo, Utah, I believe
they'll just shoot him up in Utah.
No, but I believe the person who shot them was technically a counter-protester. I think they were counter-protesting.
That's just what they said. I don't believe that for a second. We'll look into it, but I don't believe it.
I think there was like a Blue Lives Matter. There has been pro-police rallies in other parts of the country. Here's the thing. Biased hack journalists that want to drive you crazy don't write that in some red right-wing part of the country, a bunch of people had a Blue Lives Matter protest and nothing happened because it's a very conservative area and everyone went home. They don't write those articles, man. There's oh my God, what's the state? I'm trying to blink. There is the state that literally just never locked down. They just said, well, whatever. I think it was a very small state as well. It's why, but a Republican state. It's ironic, yeah. It's almost like journalists only live in blue states and they only write about things in blue states. So when things are bad in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, the journalists will convince you, or California, Illinois, and New York. When things are bad there, journalists will convince you the world's on fire.
Yeah.
When things are bad in Florida, Texas, parts of the Midwest, you don't know because they don't care.
By the way, it wasn't a counter-protester. I actually have a friend that was there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
The point was that in some parts,
it was literally one of the BLM protesters. He did two vehicles.
But I believe there was BLM protesters there protesting against the Blue Lives Matter protest. Did I hear that wrong?
No, it was basically just a giant BLM protest with these wannabe woke Utahns. You know what I'm saying? And there were cars trying to get through, and they'd shut down Center Street in Provo, Utah. And for any of you that are familiar with Utah and geography, Center Street is the main street of basically every single town. There's a center and there's a main, and it does this crisscross in the middle of town. So they shut down the street, and there was a mom, and then there was a guy with some kids that wanted to get through. And so a dude, actually, he was super sneaky about it, whips out a gun, shoots through the window, all right, puts a bullet in the guy, and a second bullet is lodged in the steering wheel, and then actually sticks it back down and just continues marching to look as though nothing happened. And he wasn't caught until somebody got cell phone footage of him doing it to a second vehicle with a woman inside. Yeah. If I remember correctly.
No,
so
here's the. I mean, but my only point was I think that there was two protests going on at the same time.
Oh, look at that. Utah County Sheriff's Office courtesy photo of 27-year-old Samantha Darling.
Yeah.
That's a Utah name.
From Ogden, yeah.
Samantha Darling.
Well, yeah, no, that was...
And here she is brandishing weaponry. Actually, I don't know what she got indicted for. So.
People, anyone out there that is slightly more leaning to the right than the left, I have good news for you. The people you listen to and get your news from only pay attention to like 5 cities in the country. They don't know anything else about the rest of the country because they don't care. And if things are bad in their little pet cities you probably don't live in, they will convince you the world's on fire. But more or less, they're probably like, it's the funniest thing to me that like the media is basically based in a few big cities. It's all they will talk about literally all the time. It's all that matters. It's all we ever hear about. Florida is a curiosity. Florida man. Ha, the meme, right?
Yeah.
But with lockdown, someone brought up, and it's actually interesting. You know what state didn't lock down? I believe someone mentioned it. I think it was South Dakota. Very interesting you bring that state up. I think we'll be talking about South Dakota a little bit here. But my only point was going back to just I don't want to like pull up a tweet and say, see, look at this. But my bigger point is I have been seeing across the board, and people will say it's dumb that people are upset they want to go to the beach or a bar or whatever, right? But it's how people feel. And as you were saying, what if it isn't even an act of like standing up? What if it is? I'm just saying, almost every single one of these comments was people complaining that they're not social distancing. A lot of them do seem to be more right wing Twitter accounts, but still, there's a large sentiment of people that are like, I don't care, not listening. No, the protest is probably the thing that was over the line where they're like, there were people, by the way, who were speaking up now who didn't before.
Yeah, I'm really curious how this is going to go because they're talking about defunding the police left and right here. We just found out 6 hours ago the LAPD has been defunded $150 million. And there's all these articles about, hey, no, defunding the police isn't enough. We should actually just rebuild it in our own image. I mean, everything Tucker Carlson predicted of them simply trying to get rid of the police because it's the last bastion of conservative public service out there. And it's one of the few rallying cries on the right that Blue Lives Matter and so on and so forth. They want to tear it down and rebuild it in their image. And this is literally what we're heading towards. We are heading towards a system in which a bunch of unemployed people have nothing but time on their hands, fulfilling the oldest of adages that idle hands are the devil's workshop, okay? In which you are justified for morally correct and righteous reasons in doing anything. You want to vandalize a public statue? Fine. Just find out that his brother's nephew once upon a time knew a guy who owned slaves in the 1860s. The 1830s. You can literally morally justify anything. Throwing a brick through a window, destroying a business. And victim shaming is utterly possible here. You beat the crap out of a guy for defending his pawn shop or his cell phone store on Main Street, and he had it coming. He was part of the problem. He deserved it for having not marched with us. And so you have a bunch of unemployed people with an insane amount of time on their hands, okay? No incentive to go back to work. We have a huge problem in our city of businesses not being able to get their employees to come back, even the ones that are open to having essential workers, because they're saying, why would I go to work for $5,000 a month when I can get $6,000 a month on unemployment and coronavirus benefits? So the few that want to work are having to shoulder a bigger and bigger and bigger burden. I feel it. And I know that all of these bailout checks are just going to be on the back of me as a personal taxpayer and my business before it even gets the money that gets to get taxed more personally. All right. So those of us that actually have to work, that have to be the motor of this bus, okay, are just getting taxed and taxed with a bigger burden. And finally, there is a breaking point for good people too. And you really have to ask what it is. Like, at what point are there more McCloskeys saying enough, burning my city down, tearing down my statues, erasing my history?
Who's McCloskey?
Oh, McCloskeys, that's the Ken and Karen in St. Louis that came out to defend their house from the mob that had broken down the gate for their gated community and then had broken through the individual gate. Okay. So we're literally putting in a system where I think police will be more taxed over the next 6 to 12 months because 40% of jobs have gone away. And one of the number one predictors of poverty crime, especially in areas where there are both rich and poor, there's what's called a comparative disadvantage, okay? So wherever it's not a comparative disadvantage, I'm sorry. It's called a comparative discrepancy. There you are, sorry. A comparative discrepancy in personal wealth will have more crime. Those crime rates are going to go up, and they're going to go up at a time when the police are now even more spread thin. And I got to tell you, the few that stayed, they haven't quit, they haven't gotten the blue flu, that haven't left, are either the corrupt, crappy ones you don't want out there anyway, or else they're very, very, very good ones, but have gotten smart really, really fast. They're going to think, dude, I'm not jumping in and break up that fight. You know what I'm saying? I ain't touching that. I'm going to show up, clock in, collect my paycheck, and go home. I need the money. That's it. I don't want to lose my job. If I stop this fight here, one of those guys is Mexican, I'm going to get called racist. Oh, that guy, I don't know if he said whether he's gay or not, so I better not jump in because I might be, lambasted as anti-gay. Oh no, it's a lady screaming and brandishing a weapon. Sorry, I better not touch her or else I'll be called misogynist. You'll have a completely disinterested, emasculated, and underfunded police force to do the job of more policing. This is absolute insanity. It is absolute insanity. And anybody that supports these movements, I have no idea what you're thinking, other than you believe weird, crazy conspiracy theories propagated by the media. I don't even know what to think with these people anymore. So it's coming to a head. And I think the perfect example thereof, Cody, is in South Dakota. By the way, quick question. We were actually talking earlier at the beginning of this show.
Hold on.
What?
Hold up. You just said like a million things in a row there. I don't know if you even know what you were talking about, but you brought up something interesting I want to talk more about.
Okay.
And it's something going on around the country. So let's get to the newsiness of this. So this is the newsiness. Yesterday, you mentioned LAPD. Yesterday, it was also announced that NYPD would have $1 billion shifted from the police in a budget that pleases no one, according to the New York Times. I don't know why they have this as the lead. Honestly, I guess it's emotional. This literally tells me nothing about the article. We can't allow folks from outside our community to lecture us about black lives, said a member of the New York City Council opposing the NYPD cuts. Okay, I don't know what that's in reference to. Anyway, they mentioned that New York City officials on Tuesday agreed to a grim coronavirus-era budget that will sharply curtail municipal services, impose a hiring freeze, and, in a move meant to placate calls to defund the police, shift roughly $1 billion from the police department. Now, I don't think get too much more into it. You mentioned LAPD announcing a lot. I want to.
I'm not familiar with the NYPD one.
I want to take that was yesterday, big news. But I want to take a step into a time machine. Now, this is just a report. Somebody that a contributor to Forbes is reporting on. But this is a story from January 29th, 2019.
Yeah.
Old news. But they mentioned that America's largest cities are practically broke. They go on to mention that 63 out of America's most populous 75 cities do not have enough money to pay all of their bills. Chicago-based municipal finance watchdog Truth and Accounting revealed the stark news in its annual financial state of the cities. Not going to get too much farther into this because my only point I wanted to bring that up is for years, people have been talking about, for years, the fact that cities are broke.
Yeah.
The cities have no money. You mentioned LAPD is similarly laying off some of its LAPD. Sorry, it's like police department. Yes, LAPD. But check this out. Do you know what the mayor of LA was saying? We're stepping in a big time machine here. I think we're going back 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
This is the worst it's ever been. The LA mayor announces city work furlough during State of the City address. This is April 19th, 2020. This is going back just a few months. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti announced plans to furlough thousands of city workers for 26 days out of the next fiscal year as one of several measures to help balance the budget amid the COVID-19 pandemic during his State of the City address. The furloughs will affect all civilian employees and will be equivalent to a 10% reduction in pay and will take effect July 1st, the mayor said. Interesting. When is it they announced they were going to be cutting back as well on LAPD budget? Was something around July 1st?
So you're suggesting it's financially motivated and not politically motivated?
The cities have no money. Coronavirus made it way worse. These cities were balancing on a tight wire act for a while, man. New York City, all these big cities, they were walking a fine line there for a while. Coronavirus killed them.
I don't think it's fair to say the big cities. The generally
LA and New York. Those two. I'm on
the leftist cities did because they constantly overspend and have no fiscal responsibility.
Regardless if they're leftist or not, my point is this, man.
Yeah.
I think cuts to police were coming no matter what. No matter what, these cuts were coming. There's no money. LAPD earlier was told, hey, you guys racked up like $1 million or millions of dollars in overtime during the riots. We can't pay you it. We don't have the money. It doesn't exist. All we could do is let you take time off. What's the logical conclusion of that?
No.
Other than
you're referencing how a week ago they gave IOUs instead of overtime checks, basically.
Well, no. I'm talking about even protests.
The people that worked during the protests, the extra hours.
But check out the story, man. This was before the defunding the police cuts. Protests in LA cost LAPD over $40 million in overtime expenses, but the officers won't be paid. Protests in Los Angeles, first over stay-at-home orders and then the death of George Floyd, have resulted in large amounts of overtime work for officers, but they will not be paid. The department will compensate the officers in time off, and there was no money in the first place. These governments are probably so happy that there's defund the police protests. They're like, thank God, man, we were defunding the police anyway. There's no money for them. We can't pay them.
Yeah.
Coronavirus killed the cities. They have no money. They can't pay anyone to do anything, much less more police to work overtime. They were coming regardless. Now they get to kind of say, well, look, we're doing what you guys asked for. You'll notice, you know what city apparently wasn't going broke? Was Washington, D.C., where they increased their funding for the police, and Mayor Bowser, who renamed the street Black Lives Matter Plaza, stood by raising their police funding by saying we fund the police at the level they need to be funded. Yeah. And saying she has no regrets of doing so. Like, these mayors, I think, would gladly hire more cops for more money, but they just can't. So if people are going to demand they do the inverse, they'll say, fine, man. Look, these cops weren't getting paid their overtime anyway. What difference is it to us if we just make it official? I mean, there's no money to go to them. We can't pay them.
Yeah.
Like, imagine New York City. New York City going belly up, finding out that they could shift $1 billion. You'll notice in this LA or New York Times article, they mentioned the fact that $1 billion was shifted away from NYPD. It didn't really please the protesters. They said it pleased no one.
Yeah.
No, it definitely pleased the government, the New York City government, having $1 billion that needed to be funded somewhere. They needed $1 billion somewhere else.
Yeah. So I got you. We got a super chat here. Shane Olmstead says, do conservative towns with a total population of 8,000 buying MRATs have financial responsibility? Have financial responsibility. For those of you that don't know, I mean, I see what Shane's doing here. I get it. Gotcha. Look, conservatives are still being stupid too. But at the end of the day, there's not a widespread problem of small towns in America buying superfluous policing vehicles. And yes, the Pentagon did allow the military to sell old MRAPs. For those of you that don't know what MRAPs are, I think they stand for mine resistant something. They're vehicles that used to be military vehicles that now
like armored cars. Yeah.
They're basically armored vehicles that a lot of police departments have converted into portable command centers. Some of them just use it to show off in freaking parades. Others have delusions of grandeur that their SWAT team is going to burst through the side of a bank like it's some kind of Michael Bay film and save the day with AR-15s blasting. But at the end of the day, the Washington Post, I sent you actually an article on it in this Discord, if you want to throw it up, Cody, if you find it interesting. There was a Washington Post writer who actually did a really interesting compilation and followed all the money to what were the top 10 smallest cities that purchased MRAPs, and the smallest city did only have 51,000 people in it. Oh, yeah. And it was a tiny city. Actually, if you go down there, look at the list. Those are the smallest towns. So like, there was Lyon County, 51,000. There was one with like, I think it was only 12, but
one second, I want to kind of do what I was saying earlier, right? Who else has the money? Yeah. Madison, Indiana, 12,000.
Because they're not broke. Yeah.
Who else has the money to just buy an armored personnel carrier you don't need, that doesn't help, and you'll never use?
Yeah. And so, well, actually, I don't say if you wouldn't say it doesn't help.
Hold on.
I've seen some of these
Can I go to a personal story really quickly?
Yes, hit it.
I think I've told this on the stream before. I used to work as a local journalist. One day, I was listening to the police scanner, heard there was a home invasion. Homeowners were gone, but a home invasion. So I get on the street. I'm on the street corner. I have my camera. I'm trying to film. They have 2 squad cars. They have cops with rifles pointed at the house, like, come out of the house with your hands up, right? So we had to wait. How long did we have to wait? First, we had to wait for more squad cars to come. Okay. Then we had to wait for the helicopter to come and pick up police officers from other parts of town and drop them off at the nearby high school and then escort them to the street. Okay, I guess. Then we had to wait for the canine units to show up so they could have their dogs there. Okay, I guess again. Then we had to wait for the SWAT to come up in the unmarked cars, talking about guys in plain clothes with like not plate carriers, but like, you know, like stuff to put their like chest rigs, full like submachine guns and everything. Okay, I guess. But then it had been 4 hours. We weren't done raiding. They had to pull it wasn't an MRAP, but the armored vehicle they had out here. They had to pull that from like a county over because they have one they share for like multiple areas, and there was traffic, so it took like an hour to get that over the freeway. And then finally, they took all the SWAT guys, they loaded them on the armored vehicle, and they drove it up a quarter of a block, and then they got out of the armored vehicle, and they went into the house, and it turns out that the intruder had left in between the people calling the cops and the first cops arriving. So it was all for nothing. That is generally speaking how these things get used, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, so look, I'm not here to defend cops and their protocols and their superfluous silliness and their unions that defend the incompetent ones, okay? I'm here to call out this idea that trying to defund the police is anything but political garbage, and the cities that are doing it, whether it's because you think they're doing it because they're going broke, which shows the failure of leftism on a massive scale in all of these urban environments, or whether it is political, which just shows the failure of their leadership principles because they will put politics over their constituency. Either way, it's a massive failure. And you want to know what? The 50 cities that bought a $40,000 military service MRAP that they may or may not have been justified in purchasing, I don't care about as much. Because at the end of the day, that's not causing a widespread problem. like the absolute lack of enforcement. You look at all the damage that mobs have caused in the top 10 leftist cities of the United States of America who haven't had a Republican mayor since 1964. Okay, you look at all the damage of Baltimore, of St. Louis, all of the damage in Los Angeles and New York. And it doesn't add up to the fiscal irresponsibility of the top 20 cities that bought MRAPs. So, I mean, to answer Shane Olmsted's question, yes, you're right. That's probably overreach on behalf of the Springville PD department purchasing an MRAP to look cool in the 4th of July parade. All right. Yes, you're right. That's probably a little bit of overreach.
It was Madison with the 12,000 people.
Yeah. So Madison, Indiana. Okay. They probably didn't need, or maybe they bought an MRAP because they're like, we need to replace the Hummer. So we might as well replace it with an MRAP. So at the end of the day, yes, it's irresponsible, but nothing next to what's going on the quote other side, which is really all the same government, just larger.
What other side? Aside from what? But I would argue this. The smaller your town, the lower the chance that you're completely bankrupt, because all these cities are bankrupt. And I think coronavirus did knock things over the edge, and the money isn't there for anyone. I mean, they're laying people off anyway. Money's being rediverted anyway.
I know. I don't like the statement that coronavirus knocked people over the edge because it takes the responsibility out of the hands of the people who have irresponsibly ran the cities from the beginning in a
no, it doesn't.
feckless manner.
They were on the edge because they were ran improperly in the first place. There's other cities that weren't pushed over the edge during coronavirus that aren't doing
coronavirus
that.
didn't push Eric Garcetti over the edge.
Specifically,
his idiocy did.
Well, but dude, Garcetti's been the mayor of LA for how many years? LA's been going down, not going down, but LA's having financial problems for like a decade, dude.
For like 20 years.
Yeah.
30.
Wasn't Garcetti like 9 years old when this started? I mean, like, can you really blame it on Garcetti? Like, I agree. The government for 30 years, I agree. The people running the city have been running it improperly. Same for New York, obviously. Dude, New York City was like at one point, New York City was like the epicenter of the globe for coronavirus deaths. It was like the Wuhan. Mm-hmm. It just, because it was in America, we didn't think of it that way. But it was like the worst place in the world to be.
What do these all have in common? They haven't had anything but Democrat mayors for literally nearly 60 years. Literally nearly 60 years. Like, at what point do you start holding the people responsible who are responsible? There are lifetimes of single-party rule in these cities.
But I agree, but I always say, though, which direction does the misery flow? Does the misery breed the certain types of politicians, or do the certain types of politicians breed the misery? I don't know, man. I think some of these cities are just untenable, and they're miserable, and they will always be that way. And as such, a certain types of politics it'll attract. It'll attract if you're living in an awful, miserable, hopeless place, you don't want to hear personal responsibility. So conservatism isn't going to be successful there. If you're living in a place that isn't all in all saying that bad and is pretty nice, and you actually could see how the personal responsibility approach makes sense to life, you might be more likely to lean that way. But when you're living in a city where it's like personal responsibility, dude, I live in hell. I live in like the abject hell. Like, I don't want to hear this BS from you. Make it better. You're probably going to lean a certain way. And I still wonder, chicken or the egg in that sense. Is it every bad city's Democrat because Democrats make it bad? Or is there this kind of weird relationship where there might be some people that somewhere have some intention that's good, but they're still politicians, so they're morons and they ruin it. But still, they're preaching a message to the people who live in these miserable places that gets farther than, oh, well, you just got to work harder. Some people might not want to hear that, and they just say, don't care. I live in a place so unfair, so awful, so miserable. Dude, like, I used to love going down to LA, like the city of Los, actually into the city.
Dude, it used to be cool, like 30 years ago.
Not even like 5-6 years ago it wasn't as bad. Now it's just miserable, man. It's just misery. I just drive around. It's like, God, this place is awful to be in. This is, and it sucks because I still love it down there. But it just, I wonder which way it goes. I really do. I wonder if cities that are just so big and dense and so many people on top of each other and so many people, it's just nothing to do and there's just not enough to go around for everyone, that if it breeds a certain type of energy that leads to Democrats coming into power because they're messaging. Because every politician's more or less
No,
ineffective.
I blame us. I don't blame Democrats for that. I literally blame us as a people. Like, at what point do we stop being naive, stupid Americans that think, oh, because this bill got suggested, oh, the media's saying it's racist. Oh, and racism is bad. So, yeah, we got to vote against Republicans. Or, oh, these people say, oh, the budget doesn't balance. But, oh, the Democrats and the media are saying that's bigotry, and that's just them speaking from bigotry.
But wait,
and so,
what is that exactly, though?
That is us being naive and stupid and believing what the media says.
Oh, no, but
because
hold on,
40 years ago, the
second.
media was trustworthy, and the most trustworthy people, according to Pew Research, in our country were Walter Cronkite and his counterparts in the media.
But was that good? Was that smart? Was Walter Cronkite
No,
also
and those were
lying?
boomers.
But we just listened to them and believe them. What I'm saying is this, man. There is a little bit of a shame on you, but a little bit of shame on us too, in the sense of
That's
this.
what I'm saying. Shame on us.
But it's also is a shame on them for this, man. Some people, just from how they've had whatever party, and this goes to everything, okay? I don't want to hear it from anyone. There's some people, and they've had conservatism or modern progressive Democrat or centrist, whateverism, right? Like, people have heard the Democrat and the Republican platforms explained to them, right? Some people prefer the way one sounds to the other, right? And then in their, perhaps you could say naivete or foolishness, maybe, they trust and listen to the people who claim to be the leaders and speakers of that ideology.
Yeah.
They believe them when they say this stuff. You could say fool on them for believing, but you also have to understand a lot of people, it goes like for every party. They're just like, well, no, I like the things that I like, the base things. For example, some people are like, but the Democrats want to help people. They want to make sure everyone has health care, and they want to make sure that people are treated fairly at their job, and I like that. And then they're lied to and
that's
led a
human
certain way.
decency. That's not left or
But
right.
wait,
that's decency.
You could say you're dumb for feeling that way. That's how they feel. There's people on the right who are legitimately just like, well, I don't know, man. I do feel like as long as you work hard and you can get to where you need to get in this country, I do think the government should step back. It needs to be less involved because you can get where you want to get. There's people who believe that way. And then they're abused and taken advantage of by morons on the Republican side. It goes both ways. Where it's that you as a human being.
No, I get that there's two times that are both. I get that there's two teams playing tug of war here, but one is winning in the idiocy Olympics.
I'm not saying that either. My point I'm trying to get across is this. This is always going to be the way it's set up, right? You'll have people who have families, they have jobs, they have hobbies, they have interests, they have a house, they have a dog, they have tomatoes they want to garden, they have a salad they want to make, they have a TV they want to hang on their wall, right? And then they have a few hours a day, and all they're going to do is listen a little bit here or there. Some of them won't even do that. And they'll just be like, but I kind of like what I hear about Democrats. Not even worker bees. They're just regular people, dude. The average person has to trust somebody else to give them their news or trust someone else to lead them politically. Because your average person has other stuff to worry about.
And how long I've been saying on this show that leftist secularism and the replacement of religion with consumerism is what has made us atrophy as a people.
But
you're literally proving my point.
Secularism.
No.
What does Lindsey Graham and freaking Mitch McConnell do for anybody, any of their poor people that vote for them? Nothing. They didn't do crap for them, okay? They don't care about them. They're in the Senate, okay? And they're both in the Senate, right? They don't care about these people. They just lie to them, and they run as a Republican. And these people like what they hear about her as far as Republican ideals go. They're not embodied by the people they vote for, but how are they going to know that? Like, realistically, I have to go out of my way to spend all this time hounding these people, reading into their quotes, not just listening to what they say, but, like, diving into the super PACs nonsense. What the hell? It feels like I should be paying someone to do it at a certain point because who has time for that? It's crap. It happens on both parties, but people get led astray and taken advantage of. And demonizing the people who made the mistake of trusting or believing someone who claimed to have their interest at heart is kind of weird to me. That's all I'm trying to get across. Both ways. I don't like when I hear these Trump voters are devils. Like, I don't like hearing that. And I don't like hearing anyone that votes for Democrats must just want to burn America down. Because most of the people voting on both sides are just like, look, man, I have my own life. It's busy. I do my own things. I kind of know which party generally speaks for what I like the more, and I just vote for them. I don't have the time to read every bill they're signed. I don't have the time to do this stuff. And most people don't, man. And it's like, it sucks to see somebody just being like, well, I think Democrats sound better to me. Vote Democrat. Like, you moron. You're contributing to the death of America. Or someone being like, I don't know, man. I don't have a lot of time. I just think Republicans sound best for me. You are a fascist. You hate America. Like, I hate hearing both those because it's like, dude, like, how much time do people have to actually look into this stuff? It drives me crazy. I'm sorry, but it really just drives me crazy seeing it both ways. Because it's like, dude, they're you. They're just another person like you. All they can do is trust what they hear from other people. What, do you get your news by picking up the phone and calling the Senate, or do you read articles? Like, Jesus, man, all they can do is trust someone and hope they're trusting the right person. And I agree. Sometimes it's foolish to do that, but I just lay off. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Hey, we got a $1 super chat. I didn't even know you could do that. It comes with this cool little bar. I don't think I've ever seen that. because it doesn't come accompanied with a question, but ephemeral madness. Ephemeral mind states. That's a super cool YouTube handle, my man. Thank you very much for the super chat. Doesn't say anything, but he tossed us a bill. Thank you very much. And Silver Fang says, Anthony, keep an open mind. You'll learn something. Yeah, that's a good idea. You know what's so interesting about open mind term, though? Be careful. Everybody says they're open-minded, but are you really?
I am.
Like, are you?
I am 1,000% willing.
Your
to
mind
accept,
has no confines.
But
you're
here's the thing.
A perspectivist purist.
I do say that I'm a radical perspectivist, but I do agree, man. Like everybody arrives to where they are not because they're stupid, because they believe something and they think something. And I like to have the way I put it is this: isn't ABBA one of like the world's like greatest selling artists of all time? I'm not the biggest ABBA fan, I'll admit, but you gotta say there's something about them people like, and just writing it off is
dude. ABBA's awesome.
People like them. Same thing. Big Bang Theory, very popular show. I think it's kind of dumb personally, but it'd be foolish of me to just put my head in the sand and say it isn't popular and people don't like it. Yeah. Like you have to understand and try to where people are coming from. Donald Trump won an election. Wasn't the popular, but he won it. You might as well spend 5 minutes of your time thinking of why. Yeah. I guess it's easy. It's easy, and it takes the burden off you to say bad motives, both right and left. Why did Hillary Clinton win the popular vote? Bad motives people voted for. Okay, yeah, I guess that's easy. But think about it. Maybe people legitimately believed she was the right person to vote for. Maybe people legitimately believed he was the right person to vote for. And writing him off as dumb and just saying, I don't have to bother thinking of why. They just did because they're wrong is foolish. I will say that.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Kalena Scott. Thoughts on hashtag Unity 2020.
I haven't read into it yet, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, I think she's referencing Brett Weinstein suggesting that we draft our presidents.
Well,
and I got to tell
you, like a manifesto kind of bill thing.
I've seen some change.org position. Man, I swear my chemotherapy.
I think they launched a website.
Medicines. Yeah, they've launched some petitions as of a couple of weeks. Here, pull up the website. If you say the website, that's news to me.
Or something like
But I think it is getting so bad. Right. I think it is getting so bad that we will be at a point where we have to draft our leadership. And what is so crazy, I can't remember the president of the church, but there was a president of the church that got up and said, if you look and you read the Book of Mormon from the point that
it was a Medium article.
When you look at a point where King Benjamin gives his sermon, and then the end of days happens in the Book of Mormon, is exact type and shadow, meaning it's exact example of what is happening in America to humanity. We are living the last chapters of the Book of Moroni. Look it up. It's free online somewhere. All right. But you can't read the last 10 chapters of the fall of the Nephite and Lamanite Empire and not see an absolute parallel and absolute comparison to what is going on right now. Because in the end, it got so bad. People were so untrustworthy. There were so many secret combinations. There was so much widespread corruption in government, which was actually back then a judgeship. Judges ran the show. They tried monarchies, which didn't work, and they switched to a elected judgeship, right? But either way, at the end of the day, it got so bad that they had to draft and beg their political leaders to lead them. And it's not just the Book of Mormon. These old scriptures show up. Like literally in the Book of Revelations, there's prophecies where it says it will get so bad.
Hold on. Are you saying that human beings have experienced similar things throughout history? Because I would agree. Yeah, we're not that creative, man. Whatever's coming has probably come before. I agree.
And that should scare us, because the people that are writing these prophecies saying when things get this bad, this is what happens, are usually those that survived massively horrible cataclysmic events.
Right. I gotta admit, dude, I really don't care at all what the Mormons say.
No, I say Mormons, bro. This is Talmudic prophecies. Okay. This is old school New Testament.
Hey, the flood's coming, right? Something like that. But someone mentioned the Articles of Unity. Do you want to go through it? That could be interesting.
Yeah, I'm down with it.
Do you want to go through it? Because we'll go through it, yeah. Just because I don't know where else to go with that. I guess let's wrap up. So let's wrap up our first discussion. We're talking about the idea of a second lockdown actually being imposed, and the idea that they had defunded police. My perspective on that is just they're defunding police regardless, because there's no money, because they've been broke and coronavirus made it worse. Anything else you want to talk about that before we move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Nothing else you want to talk about, before we move on, about lockdowns? I personally don't think if they try to implement lockdowns, I think we'll see more people. I think the first one, most people weren't going to push back on. Most people will listen to. I think a second one, people will they'll just won't listen to. But this is interesting. So this started when Mr. Weinstein, one of them, Brett Weinstein, one of the Weinsteins, on Joe Rogan's show,
it was Brett Weinstein.
Mentioned that he would like
the
to
better
see,
brother.
He'd like to see that Andrew Yang and a General McRaven run together as president. It was sounding like I didn't look into it seriously. However, he recently published the Articles of Unity on Medium, which is a patriotic plan to save our republic. I thought it could be interesting for a few minutes here. We'll go through it and see what they're talking about. I actually haven't read this. I've seen some maybe excerpts posted, but I haven't read it myself. So it says, imagine it's November 4th, the morning after the election. How will you feel? President Trump is returned to office, will you feel that your future is secure? If Vice President Biden's elected, President Biden then, will you feel that the nation's in capable hands? Now imagine instead that a courageous, competent pair of patriots takes the stage. A team not beholden to any party. Gotta admit, whenever I read political stuff that's written more like a wrestling promo than like serious discussion, I kind of get a team driven to build a future where our national vision is clear, brother. Our plan is wise, and for the first time, let me tell you something, brother. Every American is fully included, brother. Like, I don't know. No offense, but that's what I'm reading this. But I want to get through to some of the stuff. So they say the problem: our government has been captured after decades. Wait, hold on a second. I want to get into... Dang it. I thought this was more like an itemized list. It's more like just a thing.
Well, I can give you the summary because I've listened to 3 podcasts where he's basically gone into detail, and it's a 3-pronged theory. First off, they would be drafted presidents because he recognizes an intrinsic flaw that we have in the 2-party system is that both parties have been corrupted, and both parties are offering people who are generally power-hungry, self-serving folks because that's the personality traits that are required in order to rise through these systems, which to a certain extent I agree with him on. So the first one is that the president must be drafted because only drafted personality types could actually provide us with true leadership. The second is alternating leadership. They would run as a pair, both vice president and president, under the commitment to the American people. It's not legislatively enforced, but it's just a commitment as part of their platform that we will run next year with person A as vice president and person B as president. And then they will continually alternate until neither of them are eligible again, which would actually provide us 16 years of the same pair of leadership, if you think about it, which if they're good could be a really good thing. If they suck, it could be a really bad thing. But ideally, if they were people that were drafted and didn't actually want to run for the position, that would be neutered. That tendency in politicians to be self-serving people would be neutered. So 3-prong approach, they got to be drafted. Second, they alternate, okay? And then the third is that they make every decision together. So instead of being a president, it's actually a presidential duo as part of their commitment. And so that's been basically the Unity 2020 platform as presented by Brett Weinstein, which to a certain extent I think is good. And I'm surprised that nobody has actually thought of it before. And his primary example of the 2 he thought would be best were Andrew Yang and Jocko Willenick. No, I'm just kidding. Andrew Yang and
General McRaven.
General McRaven. That was it.
I believe he was in charge of when they killed Osama.
Yes. Affirmative.
Bin Laden himself. Yeah,
affirmative. And he's chilling in retirement and loving it right now.
I've said the same thing, man. If you ever try to make a third party, you're going to get tag teamed by Democrats and Republicans so hard your head's going to spin, man. Because really, they're the establishment. They're the right and left wing of the establishment, but they're just the establishment. It's the 2 sides. Yeah. You know, you know what it reminds me of? What was the thing that what's his name? Former president Reagan said, right? He was like, I think what would happen if an alien came from outer space? Would we all unite against the alien force? That's probably how the Democrats and Republicans would feel if a third party showed up, like an alien had just come from outer space, and they would team up real quick and put their differences aside to shoulder them out of the way. Because I don't think anybody wants that from the right and the left. Right now, there's 2 people at the table. Why bring up a third chair, right? That's just my take on it.
So I see a lot of people saying, because I honestly was not that familiar with McRaven. I recognized his picture when I looked it up and I said, oh, I'm going to look into this guy. I'm going to look into this idea and so on and so forth. Obviously, we recognized Yang on this channel. But I didn't really recognize McRaven. I read a little brief rundown on a lot of his accomplishments. And yeah, you're right. He had an illustrious military career. I believe he was a naval general. But apparently a lot of people say his MIT 2020 commencement speech was totally BA. So I haven't seen that yet, but I want to go back and look at it.
We read through it on the stream when we mentioned it. It would just mean like I said, I don't think it's anything going to happen. Just something worth noting that they brought it up. But I think reforming the two parties that exist is the better way. Because here's the thing, man. If you want to impact the establishment, you have to find a way into the establishment to impact it. You can't just go around it. You can try, but it doesn't work all the time. It's hard to go around it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that really, too, you have to remember, though. A lot of people aren't that loyal to the establishment. They're loyal to what they get from it. Yeah. So if you can create an alternative that can provide the status, security, money, and power that the establishment currently does, you can win over a lot of its worker bees, as you mentioned before. They don't care about right, left, whatever. People run as Republicans in red districts so they win. People run as Democrats in blue districts so they win, dude. Some of them really care, but a lot of them run because that's how you're going to win. Imagine running as a Republican in a D+13 district. What a moron you are. You're never going to win. Have fun losing every time you run.
Yeah, but that's every single Republican in LA County.
But imagine running as a Democrat in an R+20 district. Guess what? You're going to lose, moron. Why even bother running?
Oh, there's not an R+20 district in the United States of America.
Sure there is. But if you want to win, you play politics is the game is not the word I want to play, but you have to operate within its parameters. You can't just show up in a blue district, run as a Republican, and expect to win ever. You probably won't. People don't want you there. Go to where you wanted. Right, wrong, doesn't matter. Go to where they want you and run on what they want, and you'll win.
Yeah.
That's what AOC did, and she won. She won an upset victory. She won an upset and became a national star because she ran as a progressive in a district that clearly was more progressive than it was centrist Democrat, and she won doing it. Wow, it's almost like right or wrong has nothing to do with it, because it doesn't.
I don't even think that's why AOC won, though, to be honest with you, and I don't think she does, because I've watched lots of interviews. I think she's actually a very savvy woman, and she herself said, people didn't vote for me because they're more progressive. They voted for me because they're trying to survive, and they felt like they had a better chance of surviving with me. So it was because of what she wasn't that she won re-election. She wasn't a rich guy who spends all of his time in Washington, D.C., who doesn't actually go back and speak with constituents and bring home the bacon for his district and better the lives of his people. He's a guy that actually mooches off them and gets to eat at steakhouses every night of the week discussing policy about what goes on in Iowa for his political donors with their taxpayer money. And that's the reason why AOC got elected, because she worked hard. She exploited, I shouldn't say exploited because that has a negative connotation.
But they didn't want the centrist, right? They didn't want the Joe Crowley. They said, get out of here.
I don't think it was necessarily his political ideology. They didn't want him. Because he could have been a progressive too, and if he's not doing anything progressive for the people, then they would have ousted him too.
I feel like I said, you get too cemented into ideology. Ideology, right, wrong, who cares, dude? She said the things they wanted to hear. She looked the way they wanted her to look. She walked the way they wanted her to walk. She talked the way they wanted her to talk. So you win an election. Walk the walk, talk the walk, win. It's crazy, but that's true. I made the joke before, but you have to understand, you know why Nancy Pelosi keeps winning? You know why Dianne Feinstein keeps winning? You know why, who is another great, we have a lot of legacy candidates there. Maxine Waters, another one, but they're just local because we live in California. You know why they keep winning? Because they look at people running against them and they're like, dude, I sold my soul 30 years ago when you weren't even born, man. Yeah. I've been saying things I didn't believe in for the last 4 decades. You think you're going to step in here and beat me in an election? Okay, let's try. They're good at what they do. Don't look at someone who's been elected for 40 years and go, wow, or 20 years, but they must have dumb constituents. Or maybe they're good at what they do. They know how to win an election.
No, I think
they know
a lot
how to
of it
say
is,
what they have to say.
No, a lot of it I know for a
fact.
They're
not the most correct people. They just know how to win.
No, a lot of it I know for a fact is retail politics. I have met great politicians in my lifetime, and I've met very poor politicians in my lifetime. And there's ones that are hardworking and amazing, and there's ones that just... excuse me. There's ones that just, they couldn't get it done. It doesn't matter how good your ideology is or how bad it is, really, if you're a completely ineffectual leader / candidate. And so, yeah, to a certain extent, I see what you're saying there. Are we going to talk about Mount Rushmore? We've only gotten through 2 out of 4 of our subjects here, man.
We're basically out of time. But we a little bit, because I have to.
We got 18 minutes.
I don't have a whole lot to talk about in this either, so yeah, we'll go over to it a little bit.
Okay, cool. So basically, actually no, I'll let you take it away, Cody, and tell us what is going on.
Okay, well, there's lately been some. So here's a Hill article. We'll go through the Hill article first, and we'll go through the other one. So
okay.
Actually, I take it back. The Hill formats very poorly for us. We'll go through the New York Times first.
Yeah, New York Times.
So New York Times published an article that said how Mount Rushmore became Mount Rushmore. South Dakota landmark strong criticism over the land it occupies, the main sculptor behind it, and the legacies of the men it memorializes.
Yeah.
Ben Franklin? I mean, Abraham Lincoln and George Washington?
Yeah.
Those legacies?
Wait, it's not Ben Franklin.
No,
Isn't it Thomas Jefferson?
I mean, Abraham Lincoln. I was speaking specifically of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington.
Okay.
I have to admit, if you took Teddy Roosevelt from the era he was from and plopped him into our modern era, people would probably hate him. I agree. He doesn't seem like he seems like a man of his time, so to speak. But even that aside, it's like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. By the way, Abraham Lincoln, unbelievable, incredible wrestler. He's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, not WWE, like the Wrestling Hall of Fame for like real wrestling. He's in that Hall of Fame, so give him that. But we'll go through and talk about this. But the first thing I want to say before we go through into some of the controversy around people saying that Mount Rushmore is whatever is what. How many of you had thought about Mount Rushmore as a real thing? I'll be honest. The only time I
what do you mean by like as
ever
a real
thought
thing?
of the only time I ever thought of Mount Rushmore was in times like this. People would always have articles like this. Who's in your NBA Mount Rushmore? Because Mount Rushmore is a good thing. They mention it. They actually put it in here.
And it's perceived as the veneration of
faces of the NBA stick with us for a long time. However, only a select few are legendary enough to grace the 4 coveted spots on the hypothetical NBA Mount Rushmore. The imaginary monument is much more exclusive than the Hall of Fame because only a quartet of players who made a positive impact on and off the court are able to earn placement. So who takes the place of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, and Theodore Roosevelt in the basketball version? Are any current players on it? Is it comprised solely of mythologized figures from the mythologized figures from the past? I'm not going to go through all of it.
That's a good question.
But what I'm saying is, I only ever heard Mount Rushmore brought up for years in context to that. Your NBA Mount Rushmore, the idea of like 4 iconic individuals, 4 of the all-time greats. And I mean, I don't know, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, and Theodore Roosevelt sound to me like 4 of the first great American politicians and presidents, right?
Definitely. Well,
you gotta have G-dubs. There's no way George Washington.
George Washington. No, he's the greatest. He's my numero uno. My second. Actually, what's interesting is in order almost of Mount Rushmore they are. My greatest presidents, I would say, start out George Washington. Boom, shock, lock it. And then I will actually skip. I don't know. James Madison was good. Oh, no, sorry. John Adams was good. But of the founding fathers, actually, I should delineate between founding fathers. But I'd say beyond founding fathers, Lincoln, then Roosevelt. Just it's the veneration of that which is mutually perceived as good, and Mount Rushmore personifies when a society venerates its great founding fathers. I think so. I think it's a fair comparison to say, okay, it's like a political hall of fame, but encased in a statue instead of in a cool museum somewhere. You know what I'm saying? I agree with that.
But here's the big point of contention, and it gets to something I hate this concept as a whole, but we'll go through it.
Presentism.
So they mentioned the sculptor's 4 faces. So during the 1920s, a historian in South Dakota, Doane Robinson, was mulling the idea for a monument that would draw tourists to his state. Got bad news for you, man. There still ain't people coming to South Dakota. I'm just kidding. But anyway, Mr. Robinson originally envisioned a sculpture memorializing figures of the American West, such as the explorers Lewis and Clark, or the Oglala Lakota leader Red Cloud. But the sculptor, who was ultimately chosen for the project, a Gutzon Borglum, settled on a concept to pay tribute to 4 commanders-in-chief. He picked 4 presidents he thought represented major accomplishments, holy cow, in the American story, said Gene A. Smith, a professor of U.S. history at the Texas Christian University. Old TCU there. The Horned Frogs, I believe.
Yeah.
It was before he was recruited to create Mount Rushmore, Mr. Borglum had been involved with another project, an enormous bas-relief at Stone Mountain in Georgia that memorialized Confederate leaders. It was eventually completed without him, so I bring it up, but Mr. Borglum formed strong bonds with leaders of the Ku Klux Klan and participated in their meetings in part to secure funding for the Stone Mountain project. He also espoused white supremacist and anti-Semitic ideas, according to excerpts from his letter included in Great White Fathers, a book by the writer John Taliaferro about the history of Mount Rushmore. So that's one of the main points of contention. I have to be honest, people that try to come at me with, well, bad things happened in America when Abraham Lincoln was president and he didn't hold him accountable. Bad things happen when everyone was president in this country. I don't want to hear it. But what really bothers me is this notion of like, though, even though it's a monument of 4 American presidents, and one of them was the one who won the Civil War, and one of them was our first president, the guy who made it, he had some bad ideas, so it's got to go. I hate that line of thinking because I got bad news for you guys in chat. A lot of people in this world got some bad ideas. Most of them won't tell you them. Most of them will hide them. Or, according to this guy, apparently his beliefs were exhumed in letters he had sent to somebody else that were included in a book. You can't let... I don't know.
To me,
I'll put it this way one second.
It's analogous.
Really quick, though. I have no problem whatsoever watching some of the great Chris Benoit wrestling matches. No problem. Great. Chris Benoit, tremendous wrestler. I don't sign off on him murdering his family. I think that was atrocious. I think if he didn't have taken his own life, he definitely should have went to jail and died for what he did. Yeah. But at the same time, I can watch his wrestling matches and go, man's a hell of a worker. I would say I have to look at the guy. What bothers me is the painter had bad ideas when not even about the painting. I mean, is George, I don't understand. I just don't understand this notion of using the artist to besmirch the art. It's really weird to me. Because especially what doesn't line up with me is some people call this a postmodern line of thinking, but realistically, an artist puts their art out in the world and then people make of it what they want to make of it. They don't get to always decide, no, it's actually about this. And I think it's a really weird thing where the same people who will make that argument, that Moby Dick isn't about anything, it's about what you think it's about, will also make the argument that, the guy who carved Mount Rushmore was a bad guy. It's like, dude, it's not about what he did. It's about what we make of what he did. We can say that Mount Rushmore is a testament to how all of his ideas are stupid. Yeah. How there is no Ku Klux Klan that is anything of any interest in this country anymore. Have no real impact. There was KKK politicians up until the 80s, the 90s? I mean, it wasn't that long ago we got them out of Senate and Congress and stuff. I mean, but it's a different world now. So we could reappropriate his art and have it mean something else, or we can give him the ultimate power and say because this guy expressed these ideas in private messages and he went to KKK rallies, he gets to impose that message on his art for centuries.
Yeah.
And for eternity. I don't like that.
So I'm gonna address 2 super chats here, and I'm gonna piggyback onto what you said. My problem with all of these calls from different organizations to tear down monuments, to get rid of Mount Rushmore, to tear down statues and so on and so forth, and this idea that, because of who it was painted by or who it was chiseled by or even who the statue is of, so on and so forth. The only thing that bothers me and the reason why I push back on these people and I don't give a crap about what they think really is because they never do it for things they like. If you were really to follow this idea that we shouldn't be venerating or participating in these events or purchasing from these companies that do bad civil rights violations, they should all never use an iPhone again. And they should be manufacturing their own computers. And by the way, they should be renouncing their U.S. citizenship because of what the U.S. military did in the Battle of Wounded Knee. Oh, and by the way, they should never use anything that has satellites because von Braun was a Nazi. We actually had recruited an ex-Nazi rocket engineer.
Not A.
You're right. Actually,
Several.
Operation Paperclip.
Several ex-Nazis. You were either killed or hired by the U.S. government. That was your. If you were a Nazi, we either hung you or we hired you.
No, it was also more. It wasn't necessarily ideological. It was the fact that we were competing with the Soviets because the Soviets were taking all of the Eastern and Western Berlin rocket scientists. So America knew. Holy crap!
Super want to get to those?
Yes, I will. So holy crap, we got to go in and we have to take out as many of these ex-Nazi scientists to build our nuclear program, or else we're going to get blown up by the Soviets. So that resulted in the birth of satellites that we use to talk on our phones and to do our magical internet and so on and so forth.
Interesting point too.
So unless you want to literally say, I relinquish use of all satellites because von Braun was head of NASA until 1977, I don't think we should be taking down Mount Rushmore now. I'll address the super chat.
Can I get to the one I want to get, because you had a couple other comments I want to get to it quick that I read a second ago.
Okay. So
I want to get about this. So 1 second.
Okay, say something.
$5 super chat for my melanated scope. So he mentioned that the Sioux Nation, I think it was a continuance. Oh, here we go. My melanated scope, $5 super chat. Let's go through them. Give the land back. That land was and is sacred to the Sioux tribe. There's deep systemic roots as to why the U.S. chose that spot. Sioux Nation, but as indigenous person, we think all the time. Interesting. That's an interesting point. Actually, indigenous people would think about it.
No, I'm actually very familiar with the story.
Ava's been pushing against it since 1969. Crazy Horse Memorial is nice. Yeah, we looked at the Crazy Horse Memorial. Fortunately, they can't get it finished. It's been going for 60 years. But he also mentioned something else, though, that just simply the fact that it was basically said, because I agree, the fact that the sculptor had bad ideas, miss me with that. Now, there is an argument you could say that it's built on sacred land. However, here's the thing, and I hate to say it, and I know it sounds crass, but like, this is the United States of America now, unfortunately. If that land had been given to the Sioux tribe and they came in and did it later, and I get that it's like messed up and they shouldn't have done it, but like at a certain point though, it sucks to lose, and that's what it looks like. I'm not trying to be like cruel or like mean or like heartless.
You're not justifying it. You're just explaining.
Yeah, right or wrong doesn't matter. It's just that it's like they took the land and did something with it.
Now
it sucks. And there's one more super chat. Just that Natalie Jensen, $5. Hey guys, keep up the good work. Hope to see Brittany the Shadow soon. I like all the perspectives. Thank you.
Yes, Brittany the Shadow will be here for our Thursday show. They're actually backed by popular demand. Will be Brittany the Shadow. Now, first off, my melanated scope. That's awesome that you're a Native American. I love the Native American tribes of the United States of America, and it's one of my biggest frustrations that we don't do more as a society to preserve the amazing, rich cultural achievements.
But do you know why we don't?
What'd you say?
Do you know why we don't? I think, in my opinion, quickly.
Oh, yeah, because the Bureau of Indigenous Affairs ruined half the tribes.
No, because it is kind of a weird sore spot, because it is kind of like we did kind of just run you off your land. And like,
no, it's because you hate the people that you wrong.
Exactly.
That's why.
But that's my point. They would rather just mention none of it because they realize it kind of makes us look bad because we probably shouldn't have done it. But whatever, it's done. That's like the attitude, right?
Yeah. No, I actually did video content as a young filmmaker trying to preserve some of the culture of. We actually had 22 Sioux Indians that lived on a informal reservation owned by a sausage company nearby here, and I was actually doing a cool video content with them. Okay, what was done to the Native Americans was actually was barbaric and was shameful. Okay, however, yes, we do live in 2020. It would be literally physically impossible to right all those wrongs. However, I think AIM does have a good point. I don't know what the motivations were of the men that put Mount Rushmore on what used to be sacred Lakota. I believe it was Lakota Sioux land. I don't think the fix is tearing down Mount Rushmore. I think the fix is contextualizing it and finishing the Crazy Horse Monument. Like, I don't believe that the fix for these historic wrongs are necessarily trying to undo what has already been done as much as a function of doing positive things going forward. Okay. And I think there's a heavy burden on both groups here. I think there is a heavy burden on the United States government to behave in an ethical manner going forward with American Indians. And there's also, unfortunately, I hate to say this, there is an ethical burden, I think, on the tribes of the United States of America to forgive. I think forgiveness is something that we lack as a society. Empathy and forgiveness are two things that I think we really, really lack and are going to be wholly necessary for our diverse culture to go forward functionally.
I mean, the tribes mostly have dealt with the pretty raw deals they were getting. I don't know what else could be. I don't know. I don't want to get too far into it, but it's a weird philosophical question for any state, right? What does any state do when? Because I mean, stolen land's one way of wording it, right? But the other thing is every country forms its borders by taking over something from someone else, just where it comes from. Like, someone was there first. And generally speaking, it's kind of one of the weird things. In a way, I'm not trying to equate Native Americans with the Confederates. Don't get that wrong. But what I'm trying to say, it's kind of a good way of that same argument, right? Where it is easier to completely expel all traces of the people you got rid of. It's much easier, man. It's much harder to let them stay around because then you have to live with that black mark on your record. And I think it's one of the things the American government, they made a lot of bad moves, right? But it's one of the weird things. Other places throughout history, they have sought out the entire exterminations of people they've replaced. either enslaved or exterminated every last one of them because they realize as long as they exist, what we did still exists. When they're gone, we can say we never did what we did, right? And I think it's one of the weird things. It's tough, man. It's what does any country do with that?
Yeah.
People that got wronged to build what you have. They're always going to exist. The people that got wronged, people that got shafted, the ones that got the short end of the stick, so what could be built was built. They exist everywhere. What do you do with them? It's easy to just get rid of them entirely. Make sure they never exist and no one ever knows their history, because then you'll have to deal with it. I'm not saying America's perfect, but some people had been trying and advocating for something different, saying, no, we should have territory. Now, unfortunately, reservations don't work out so great for Native Americans across this country. It kind of sucks in some places, from what I've heard. I don't live there, right? But there's definitely complaints there. It's not perfect. It didn't go well, but it's weird, man. I don't know what you do. I really don't. I'm not saying I agree with what was done. I'm not saying I agree with the Trail of Tears. Probably a bad move there, some of the nonsense that was going on. But it's weird. What do you do in order to make your country go? In order to achieve manifest destiny, people had to go.
You know what I really think?
It's weird, man.
No, I've actually thought about this. First off, to achieve manifest destiny, people did not have to go. It was because of a barbaric idea pushed forth by Blumenbach, who was a scientist that believed due to ethnic differences, there were different races and different ones were superior. Like, what people don't realize is when you study racism, it is, you want to talk science denial? Yeah, it was a good thing there was science denial in the 1800s and the 1700s, because it was the scientists that were going out there trying to say that one race was superior than another. Look it up. It was a scientist named Blumenbach that basically birthed the idea of racism, okay? So I think there needs to be a return to morality, and there are two heavily, historically marginalized groups in the United States of America that I think do have some sort of legitimate claim to reparations. And I know generally most conservatives bristle at that terminology, but here's a way that I think you could move forward in a way that benefits both people. Make African Americans and make American Indians your test group for UBI. We know we couldn't roll it out universally all at once in a 5-year period, but do 5 years first amongst the Indian tribes and amongst the African-American community as some kind of head start, shall you call it. You'll be able to do 3 things: glean an insane amount of data on how it works, because I'm confident it will work. 3, you'll be able to have a proving ground and say, look, we literally just raised out of poverty X million people. We started these 100,000 businesses, these 40,000 cultural icons made their first albums or their first paintings based upon infusions of capital from UBI. And look, now we're going to roll this thing massively forward for the entire population. So I would not be opposed to a form of reparations to these specific groups if it was a battleground and a testing ground of UBI.
What about
that's a way I think you could move forward with it.
But what do you say to the notion that it's never right for the state to single out any race of people for any reason? It's not the government's business to single out racial groups for treatment, whether it be favorable or unfavorable. It's just not the business of the government to do that. What do you say about that?
Okay. I would say the exact same thing that Tucker Carlson says to the purists of capitalism, that we invented capitalism to serve us, not for us to serve capitalism. I'm not talking
capitalism. I'm talking.
No, I know. I'm making
race.
an analogy.
Where does the state?
Let me make an analogy. But I'm saying that yes, I am almost a purist when it comes to capitalism. However, I recognize that sometimes you have to look at capitalism and say, hey, hold on a second. You're a tool that we wield. We are not a tool that capitalism wields.
I'm talking about racism, not capitalism.
So yes, when it comes to, I think that governments should be literally colorblind in hiring practices. Okay, and that is something I am almost completely a purist on.
But they should be racially discriminating in benefits
for a short period of time.
Okay, for racial discrimination with rules.
Hold on. For if, just like I said, I would be okay with a lockdown for coronavirus if it were for a short period of time with a definitive in and out with a measurably quantifiable benefit for everybody. Yes. Okay, so usually I'm a huge civil rights guy. But if you can show me that if we lock down for 2 to 3 weeks, then I'll do it. If you can prove to me the Japanese bombers are going to destroy our cities, if we have our lights on, so we're actually going to impose martial law upon our citizens so you can't turn your lights on after dark, so we're all safe from the Japanese bombers, which is technically a violation of freedom of assembly, then yes, I will go for that. In the same vein, I'm usually a purist that says, do not consider race or ethnicity in any kind of hiring practices or anything like that. But because this form of reparations in the form of UBI going forward would fulfill my 3 categories of being short term with measurably quantifiable differences, measurable quantifiers that have a beginning and an end to them that's short term, that can be easily measured, then yes, then I would be okay with it.
So I'm glad you gave me a long reason for explaining why government racial discrimination is okay to you. Don't want to hear it from you whenever you talk about the government racial discrimination being bad, because you've just said it's a good idea. No, the government should never racially discriminate. That's just how I feel.
Well, I don't think it would necessarily be race as much as it would be like, it would be
just
tribal.
Native Americans and African Americans. So like just black people, Native Americans, just them. Not discriminating. We're just singling you 2 groups out to give you. No. Do you want to know the easiest way to turn groups of people against each other? Easiest way. Single one out, give preferential treatment. Congratulations. Animosity. Because when you know you're being treated differently than other people, you feel a certain way about them, they feel a certain way about you. It's been done literally a million times throughout history. You take one group of people, you treat them better than the others, not even better. That's the wrong word. You give them something you don't give someone else, and it starts to lead to a point, and even if it's like in the grand scheme of things, they're being treated worse. If they're being given a benefit, others aren't being given, it drives animosity time and time and time and time and time again. It's the same thing. It always happens because people don't like to be treated differently than others. Even if it's better, they don't like it. They might say it benefits me, but then they know like, well, dang, I'm like kind of like I'm literally getting a benefit because other people don't in this sense, and it's weird. I don't know. Maybe I'm way off on that one. I just feel like it's the easiest way to turn people on each other. Let's say you're being treated differently because of your race, enshrined in law. Weird, man. Why?
No, but see, that's why I emphasize the short-term aspect of it, because I don't want it enshrined. Now, I will tell you this much right now. I would be incredibly dubious of anybody that's not me saying this because I don't trust the motivations of these politicians. Yeah. I don't trust that it would be short-term. I don't trust that their measurable quantifiers would be anything but corrupt and cronyist. And I don't trust that there would be any end in sight. So there's a good chance that I would vote against my own doctrine that I said right now, simply because I don't trust the people, right? I would never trust Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi with a bill introducing UBI into those 2 sectors first as anything but a cynical ploy to get more votes that ultimately would end up being UBI only for people that look like they're going to vote Democrat. So yeah, you're right. I don't think generally, and I maintain the purist tone, because if I trusted my leaders, I would actually be a little bit more okay with surgical considerations of race to right previous wrongs. Well, not right them, but do something to address previous wrongs that could be addressed without overly taxing the economic situation of everybody else, and would be better for all parties moving forward. And I think there are very occasional and unique times when you can do that, but not at the hands of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. That's what it boils down to.
Hey, dude, I got bad news for everyone in chat, man. Discrimination's fine sometimes for everybody, and it sucks. Anyways, get a $5 super chat from my man on Nate He says 17 grocery stores in the Navajo Res, the size of Vermont. MMIW, substance issues, lack of resources, UBI for indigenous folks would be life-changing. I would rather see just in general the government had set up, not have things that's... Cody is on the concept of fair, equality, equity. Well, not exactly. The thing I want to get to is helping people because they're wrong because they're regular people in this country, right? Like there's Americans in this country living on reservations that have BS conditions that need to be addressed. That's uplifting we can get around. They're natives, they're different, they live on a reservation, they need benefits. Just don't go about it that way. Go about it the way of there shouldn't be anybody living in this country that way. And especially you could say, and then you could bring up even more to the fact you live in this reservation because of kind of BS in the past there. But I don't like the idea of singling on race. Single on the issue and then move from there. I'm not saying it is nothing, but start on the issue because I agree, man. It sucks. I've read multiple things about the conditions on the reservations. It's nonsense. Shouldn't be that way. Should be addressed by someone.
Yeah.
Because there shouldn't be anybody living in this country in those conditions. I agree. It's nonsense it goes on.
Yeah, but here's the other thing that you have to realize, and a big problem with the Bureau of Indian Affairs is that every tribe and how it is treated is different because they've negotiated different contracts. Yeah, I shouldn't say contracts.
Because there's not the Native Americans. There's different tribes that existed.
And you have to realize these are sovereign nations. Many of these tribes have actually negotiated deals with the U.S. government in which they are legitimately countries within countries. And the U.S. government basically says, okay, you are stepping out of the United States of America, kind of, when you step onto this reservation, and they're going to have their own tribal police. They're going to have their own Indian chiefs that dictate how they will settle local legislative issues. And there's rampant corruption because the chief will give all of the power and the housing to just his family and his cousins. I mean, there have been heartbreaking stories that I have heard from different friends of mine that I have had that have lived on Indian reservations of rampant corruption, substance abuse, and all of it is caused by the fact that there's this microcosm of corruption within the macrocosm. So I don't think there is a quick fix for it, and I think it is worth trying to preserve the culture of these beautiful people. I mean, we have one of the only instances of archaeoastronomy on the North American continent is actually the sunstone. Some people think it was made by the Anasazi. Other people say that it was made by the precursors of, not postcursors, those that follow the Aztecs in the southwestern United States. And it's a beautiful culture that we don't really understand. There's some places where there's oral history preserved. We're not doing enough to preserve it. And I think channeling extra energies to try and record these languages, record this culture for future generations is more than just some kind of righting of wrongs based upon racial identity, as much as it is preserving an aspect of the American story. I like how you say, Cody, why can't I listen to the Ghetto Boys, and when he says, I think I'm going crazy, and he talks about the difficulties of living in the hood and how it's actually...
Specifically, it's my mind's playing tricks on me.
Oh, my mind's playing tricks on me. Yeah. Why can't I listen to the Ghetto Boys, my mind's playing tricks on me, and feel like that is just as much a part of the American story as the cowboys in the old Westerns that were talking about how, hey, having to live constantly with this gun on my holster, man, I think I'm going crazy. Like, how is hip hop not the exact same thing as the Wild Wild West? And why can't I enjoy both? Because I got these psycho leftists screeching in my ear saying, no, that's music for the African American community, not you, or whatever.
Well, it's not just leftists, it's everyone. But I agree, man. I agree. Here's the thing.
So why can't we do that with American Indians?
Because here's the thing, you call American. I understand there's different tribes, right? But you say, like, hey, there's a reservation in this country, and they signed a treaty that was kind of a crap treaty a long time ago, and they're getting the raw end. They're being led by corrupt people. We should be saying, wow, that shouldn't be going on here. We should be doing something about it. My larger point is this, man. You want to color someone, you want to change the way someone thinks about something, tell them that there's a group of people different than them that experience life in a way they'll never experience it, and they're separate from you. They basically are from Mars, and you should care about them. They'll say, what the hell? What? That's weird. You're telling me I literally can't look, talk, or do anything they do. We're essentially separate entities and I should care about them? That's weird. Instead of rallying around the fact that we're all humans and share way more in common than we'll ever have in different, there's so many people focused on the weird stuff. It's just being like, hey, we should help people because they need help. And you'll normally realize people are willing to help people. Yeah. It's when you drop all this weird stuff on their heads of why and where and when. It's you're giving them reasons. You're giving people an excuse to be like, the hell with this. Yeah. Because I'll admit, most people have no excuse to be like, to hell with trying to help people that need help. They don't need it. Yeah. But you hit them over the head with enough random stuff, well, this, that. Eventually they'll be like, you know what, the hell with it, man. I'm not hearing it. I feel like, but there's a reason why people know what they're doing when they use language. I've said this before, I think. They created a new class of human, the unarmed black man. It drives me crazy when I see it. It's like, so they aren't real people. They're the unarmed black men. When things happen to them, they happen to the unarmed black.
Unicorns.
Not even that. It's like, why should I feel any different about what happens to an unarmed black man than any other American citizen? Tell me why I should. Tell me why. Oh, because it happened to the unarmed black man and not an American citizen. Again,
it should
keep
be
that
the
in mind.
unarmed
Not
American
just a regular
citizen.
person.
Yeah.
Not like someone you know. Not like someone down the street. This other drives me crazy, man. You should feel the same outrage no matter who it is that happens to, because it doesn't matter what your race is. It shouldn't matter what your skin color is. If something is done to you wrong, people should be held accountable. People should feel a certain way. But they'll create these different classifications of people so you can feel your own way about it if you want. But it drives me crazy, man.
Yeah.
To your point, what's the difference? Why do I have to feel, oh, someone got shot by the police, who cares? Unarmed black man, that's an outrage. Or the inverse, someone got shot by the police, that's an outrage. Oh, they're black, who cares? Both are wrong. You should say, wow, the police killed someone they shouldn't have. That's wrong. That shouldn't have happened. Or whatever. People are getting screwed by banks. They're getting bad loans from banks. That's wrong. Banks shouldn't be screwing people.
Yeah.
But when you start adding all these different things, all these different things to separate me from them. Tell you what, you give me a lot of outs to say, well, ain't happening to me. I guess I don't care that much. But when you remove those stops and you make them realize, no, they're just a regular person like you. They're not this mythical class of person we just created. They're just like you and it's happening to them. Then people will care. Yeah. That's the problem, though. I feel like they don't want people caring. If they wanted people caring, they'd be talking like that. They don't want people caring, so they put 5 words in front of man or woman to make sure you know they're not like you before they tell you what happened to them. Drives me up the wall, man.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you, and it looks like a lot of people do in the chat as well. Adam Duffy, thank you very much for the super chat. Says, hey guys, was an hour late, so I'm watching from the beginning and dropping this in for future me. Cheers. Hey, rock on. Well, when future you gets here, Adam Duffy, welcome, and thank you very much for the super chat. Actually, this is kind of like that one cool movie. What was that movie where I remember there was a scene where the future version of him came back and they were speaking. It was called Frequency, I believe it was, a movie that came out in the 90s.
Don't know, but I believe it.
And there was this one scene where the past version of him was fighting with his father, I believe it was, and he goes to stick his hand out, and then a shotgun blast blew off his hand, and then the future version of him all of a sudden looks up and realizes he doesn't have a hand and it's just a stump. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what's happening with Adam Duffy right now. You know, he is sending that super chat into the future. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be an Easter egg later on. So anyway, also, My Melanated Scope, thank you for the super chat. This is the My Melanated Scope show today. It says, before Chaz/Chop, there was Occupation of Alcatraz. Yeah, dude, now, the Occupation of Alcatraz, that is so much cooler than Chop. I'm sorry. The Occupation of Alcatraz has so much more street cred
supply's tough.
than the Chaz.
It's hard to resupply an island.
Yeah, dude. I was about going to say, the street cred of the people that straight up occupied a prison island is so much cooler of a movie, a comic book, and a story.
Wait, 1 second. But street cred, but like, what about bigger than street cred? I think it's very.
What do you want to brag to your kids about, Cody? Oh, dude, one time we occupied a place with running water.
I guess I'll brag to my, but not even
in town.
It's not even about that. It was interesting, an interesting moment. And again, dude, I agree. For whatever reason, American Indians have got absolutely shafted in the last like 20 minutes of last 20 years of grievances. They're just out the window. It's like, none of your grievances matter. Dude, I would think, honestly, one thing I legitimately, legitimately, I'm not against the idea of revisiting some of the treaties to look if some of them work. Because I'm sure there's some of those treaties that are bogus, man.
No,
some
the Cherokee are supposed to have a senater.
Yeah, so
the Cherokee were promised a senator.
I think if you want to do legally, I'm totally for revisiting those things and trying to clean some of those things. I'm guaranteeing there's problems in there. I just think that's a way you can start legally. You can say, look, we literally have treaties from the U.S. government and other countries that are being revisited.
Cody,
treaties are revisited.
This was exactly what I was saying earlier, though. That's why I don't think those two groups specifically would necessarily be based purely upon racial identity, because, for example, Abraham Lincoln literally did promise 40 acres and a mule, and that was a promise that was left undone. Redlining was a specific prohibition based upon ethnic identity that left the accrual of wealth via a mortgage left undone. And the fact that Cherokee, part of the treaty that, I don't think it was Custard, but part of the treaty that the U.S. government and the U.S. Army signed separately with the Indian tribes was this idea that you will give us our land if our settlers can go there peaceably and you won't attack them. Oh, and we will give you, just like we didn't believe in taxation without representation when we were rebelling against the monarchs in England, we will give you, it was either a representative in the House of Representatives or a senator. And that was never given to the American Indians. Like, I think that's a claim that is legitimate because it was a legal treaty that was simply left unfulfilled, not because I'm thinking of any kind of superiority or inferiority of racial identity, but because there was straight up pen put to paper and the contract wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you're not talking about divide. It's a grievance that makes more sense. A document was signed and we're stuff that's revisited. I agree, but just in general, it's always weird to me when they start throwing a bunch of different qualifiers into any kind of article or any kind of report, and it's like, dude, what the, like seriously, like it's like what, like if you work somewhere, you'll probably refer to someone who's just like, oh, that's Dave from accounting or whatever, right? Yeah. He's not Black Dave, the black one. And when you work with someone, they're just the guy you work with, the girl you work with.
What if instead of doing it racially, we did it by your job description? What if it was accountant /American Dave. Accountant American Dave was speaking with Pest Control American Carlos, who was also aware that actor American Steve had a problem at his house, and they were all being invited to a party with basketball player Carl.
Yeah. Like, I haven't fully thought, but it was, I think Morgan Freeman was the one who said this, where he said the fastest path to ending racism is stop talking about race. And I think that's what I don't know if I'm not going to weigh into all of it, but I do agree. There's a lot of people in this country, for whatever reason, that have a lot of interest in continuing racial grievances. Financial, probably, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But some interest. There's people that will not rest until every racial grievance is extended for forever.
Yeah.
And it's really weird to me. One thing I saw happen a lot was just...
I agree with you.
But it was just like, there's weird... I don't know, there's so much... Like, we talked about it the other day. It was very bizarre. The word Anglo, for the third time making a reference. But it's weird, man. That word, we did some research into etymology. It largely exists to denotate in white Europe the white Europeans from England that spoke English. Because when you're all white Europeans, you kind of have to have words to separate. Well, are you French? Are you Dutch? Are you... What are you? Oh, they're Anglo. They're from England. If you look up the official definition today, even in the UK version of the English dictionary, it speaks about being a denotation to separate white Americans from Hispanic Americans. It's really weird,
like,
man.
what?
That wasn't what... That isn't what it meant for hundreds of years.
And that's not what Shakespeare used it as.
Well, when they signed the, like, treaties referring, but my larger point is, you'll notice that there's a industry, for whatever reason, built around extending and continuing and digging up old racial grievances to make sure they never end. I don't know where it comes from, other than maybe money and influence, I guess. But some of it's sickening, the stuff people will say. It's disgusting. I see people openly advocating for race wars for basically every race all the time. And it's the weirdest thing to me. I'm like, how could you ever say that, man?
Yeah.
How could you say that and not be in the streets killing people? Because what you're saying is so hateful and just outrageous. I can't believe you'd say it. But there's people make money off it, man. They sell books. They sell millions of books.
So this has been great. Thank you very much for hanging out with us, guys. If you have any last super chats, we'll be here for another 30 seconds. In the meantime, please make sure that you guys smash the like button. We only got 34 people that hit the like button. Oh, man, that's less than a fifth of us. So if you guys can, before you go, make sure you hit that like button. If there's any way that you want to help grow the PSP Army, just make sure you share this live stream. Say, hey, these are guys that we hang out with at the end of every day talking about what went on and how it affects us. Also, if you guys want to follow us on social media, make sure you check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at PSP Radio 1. And also, Brittany the Shadow will be with us on Thursday for our call-in show. We will be posting more information on that. We'll probably do a brief live stream and then allow you guys to have some calls to speak about, hey, whatever you want to talk about. So anyway, this has been real, and it's been fun, and it's awesome, and it's been real fun. It's Problem Solver Politics. See you in the next video.